Jean, we're ready to go live.
Are we ready to go?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, there I go. It's just got the message. Great. Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm trying to get myself online so that you can actually see me. But I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. We do have a couple, I think, business items just to go over really quick, if you don't mind. First of all is to just remind everybody to click on the link that I believe Sonia is going to put in the chat here for everyone. And that link opens up the well, actually it opens up the monitoring report. And today we will be going over several sections of the monitoring report. You will be listening to, I believe, 2.6. You will also be,
Mimi?
yes.
We have Heather and Jeannie here first to talk about the superintendent's contract and a couple of other things.
Okay, perfect. So I believe the 2.6 is the superintendent's contract. And so that is going to be Heather. And then, ooh, sorry, guys. Okay, is that better? Okay, and then that'll also have some 2.4 in it about late fees, fines, and dues. And sorry, guys, I'm having technical difficulties. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and let them get started here in just a few minutes. But prior to that, we also have one of our board members who needs to take an extended leave, and we wanted to bring that to the Finance and Audit Committee to get approval for that. Just like when Chris Claypool had issues that he had going on. He had priorities to do with his own personal work. We allowed him to remain on the board. So I wanted to bring this to your attention to see if you all felt comfortable allowing Josh Click to be able to take an extended leave. Sonia, and I apologize, do we know about how long of a leave he's going to be asking for?
No.
He
didn't say.
Okay, so I don't know if everyone wants to think about that, and we can regroup at the end of this meeting and kind of vote on that and make sure that you guys feel comfortable knowing that we don't have a time frame. But that is all your decision. It is not ours. So I wanted to make sure I brought that to your attention. And with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Heather and to Jeannie and let them present to you. Actually, I don't think they really have anything to present. It's probably more just questions. And are we going to do since Jeannie's on here as well, we should probably do the 2.4. And Sonia, can you help me out? Which 2.4 is this one?
We have 2.4.5 penalties and late fees and 2.4.6 receivables.
Okay, and 2.46 is with John, so we will wait.
He'll come on in a few.
We'll wait for him to come on, but let's do the penalties and fees. So if everyone wants to go to their 2.45 tab and review the agenda item for what we have for penalties, and then you may ask Jeannie and Heather if they have any information regarding any penalties or late fees that they've encountered in the last year. And I will leave that up to you. So I will turn this over to them. Jeannie, Heather, are you guys here?
Yeah,
For
yeah,
some
we're
reason-
here.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
really nothing we have to present. We don't have any penalties or fees. I don't know if anybody has any questions regarding that. But we don't ever have any penalties or fees, so we don't pay any penalties or fees.
So I think one of the questions would be is, where would we encounter a possibility of ever having penalty or fees? Like why would you two be the individuals we'd be bringing onto this if you want to talk about the areas of your specialty?
So for accounts payable, we might see someone try to charge a fee if we're late on paying something. But whenever we see anything like that, like on a statement, we always would just call the vendor and get it cleared up, and we just let them know that that's not something that we pay, and we haven't ever had an issue with them challenging that or asking us to pay those.
So as far as payroll, we could possibly receive penalty fees if we're late submitting tax payments or para payments. So really, those are the two main entities that we could receive penalty fees on. But like I said, we never submit anything past the due date, so we haven't incurred any penalties.
Do any of the FAC members, do you guys have any questions you want to ask them, or do you want me to keep asking questions?
The only thing I would ask is there anything in this contract that varies wildly from our neighboring districts, or anything that you would point out as highly unique, possibly in any way, that we should be aware of?
Are we talking about Chris's contract?
Yeah, I'm sorry, isn't that what we're talking about?
Not yet. No,
Oh,
right now
I'm
we're
sorry.
just talking. That's all right. Right now
I got ahead of myself.
We're currently talking about 2.4.5, which is do we incur any penalties for tax payments or government ordered payments or any other payments? So that's what we're talking about currently.
Okay, so one of the questions that I would pose, thinking, because this is a review of monitoring report, so we'd want to think about, we're doing an external kind of monitoring review, is what steps do you all take to ensure that we do not have any penalties and that you file everything timely?
So as far as payroll, I have like a monthly calendar that I have the due dates posted, so I know when everything is due. And I mean, it's just a habit now. Everything is posted and paid on time within the due dates.
As far as AP goes, we get statements from vendors showing what we owe. If we don't have invoices, then we call them and ask them to supply those to us and make sure that it gets sent to the right department and it gets paid as soon as we possibly can pay it.
Do you guys have processes in place that if one of you are to be unexpectedly out, that somebody automatically knows who is supposed to take over and ensure that those type of fees don't incur through oversight?
For AP, we have 2 people in AP, so it's not just me. We actually have 2.5 people, so it's not just me that would monitor that stuff. So we do have somebody else that can certainly get the statements. They all just come either emailed to an AP email address that we have that we can all access. Some people send them in the mail, which we all open, and so it doesn't just belong to one specific person.
As far as payroll, I have a payroll specialist lead who is actually my backup. So she knows how to do everything I do. So she could pick up if I were to be out. So yes, we have that in place.
Are there any potential backdoors, I guess, that these kind of penalties might come through? Maybe because they're such a lower dollar amount or anything like that? Or is, I guess, I'm assuming we have pretty good confidence everything is reviewable, that we can look at and ensure there's nothing kind of coming in a back door, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, we look at all the invoices that come through to make sure that they don't say late fees or whatever. And if they say anything like that, we do contact the vendor and let them know that's not something that we pay, and we would remove that right away. And we've never had anybody say no if we've ever seen anything like that.
What about just like terminology? Maybe they don't use late fees, or maybe they're just some other kind of terminology that might not be viewed as such, but that's really one of these kind of fees.
Well, if they included as far as the product goes, we would have no idea, but most of them would add it as a line on an invoice. And so that's not something we would pay. So
We
we
have a
would
question.
contact them and ask them what the extra line says, like if it's not, easy to see what it is, we would contact the company to find out exactly what that is.
We have a question in the chat too for you, Jeannie.
So the question is for AP, how are payments typically made? By check, credit card? And if credit card, are any fees associated?
We have 3 ways to pay. We pay by check, ACH payment, and by credit cards. So, and those are all reviewed when everything comes through. And we pay out twice a week. We have check runs every Wednesday and every Friday. So we pay pretty quick as far as, that goes.
And then Kelly, I can respond to the portion about the credit card fees. So generally when you pay a vendor using what's called kind of like a ghost payment or a V payment through the credit card, generally it is the vendor who is paying those specific merchant fees. The district does accept credit card receipts or credit card payments from parents for student fees and so forth. And the district does incur fees when we accept it. But when we are collecting a payment from a vendor, generally it is the vendor itself that incurs that fee.
Thanks, Mimi.
Okay, are there any additional questions regarding penalties and late fees? Okay, great. Then I think we can move on to the superintendent's contract.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie.
And I'm not sure what you guys have to review. I don't know if you have the superintendent contract to review, if you have paychecks. So I'm not sure what exactly you're looking at.
This is 2.62, everyone. I believe that you have the superintendent contract. I think Sonia's just now sharing some stuff in the chat. Some of the items should just be in our folder because some of the documents are not public, so they won't be online. But the 2.62 tab should be able to, I'm sorry, is it 2.62? Make sure, I'm sorry. 2.61. Yes, sorry. I was on the wrong tab. 2.61.
I can't find my notes from last year when I did this, but I seem to have the year before, and it seems there's actually been quite a few. I was just glancing this morning. I haven't had time to look at this. It looks like there's quite a few changes, at least between the contract from this is 2018, but I guess like maybe 3-year contracts and this one. salary has increased greatly. So I guess that's our main thing. Has that all been done properly, gone through the board, whatever that procedure is?
Yes, yeah, I mean, it has gone through the board. And so what you'll see is, like, a couple years ago, the vehicle allowance was a greater dollar amount.
Right, I noticed
And
that too,
now-
it's 700 and now it's 200, right?
So part of that has been moved into salary.
Okay. I also noticed there was a change in the wording for the medical, dental, vision type insurance, how that works.
Yes, so previously, so now it's a little bit different. So previously, the district was paying for the benefits, and now it's basically coming out of the paycheck, but Chris is receiving an insurance stipend. So if you look at, sorry, let me find it.
Right, before it was 5% of, because the superintendent was contributing 5% of the employee only health insurance premium. So what was the change made for?
So he's still paying the employee monthly cost, but previously there was no in and out for the insurance. The district was picking up his insurance coverage for his family. And now basically the insurance is coming out of his paycheck and he's receiving a stipend. So we can now see an in and an out on his statement, basically.
Okay. I also see, oh, I'm sorry, I'm kind of going through this as I go.
Go ahead.
There's changes to, like, so in the contract I have, G was about, so line item G was about the superintendent will establish and maintain his primary residence within the boundaries of the district. And now G is something completely different about increasing the compensation.
So this, let me grab an old contract.
Yeah, like there's quite a few changes actually.
Sorry, I wasn't comparing old to now.
Yeah, G, H, and I are all very different than what the contract I have, at least. J and K are gone. Maybe they moved it. Oh, so maybe J became H, maybe.
I think everything's just moved around. He's still receiving all the same.
But it looks like maybe that line item about the having to maintain his primary residence from the district is gone. That's the one I can't seem to see at all. And then about a regular annual physical, I don't see that one either.
You know, I don't see. Yeah, I don't see anything about living within the district bounds.
Mimi, do you know like how that process would go, that those things would have changed so much from the contract?
You know, yeah, I was just looking through that and I always thought that was in there as well. And, you know, the board itself goes through this contract. And so that probably is something I'm going to have to take back to the board and to our HR department and ask them if they can provide where the changes were and what decisions were made to specifically identify those changes.
Maybe that one doesn't have anything to do with money, like we're verifying money, but I don't see it in the contract anymore. And then the one that does have to do with money is the district shall, in the previous contract last one I have available here to me is the district shall pay, this was H previously, the district shall pay for the superintendent to have a regular annual physical examination to the amount of $350 per year. And that's gone too.
Okay.
And maybe that rolled into some of that other stuff, but because of the way they changed the compensation, maybe that became part of that, but those are the two I specifically don't see anymore.
Okay. I will definitely follow up with, I'll follow up with HR, legal, and the board just to ask that question. And very well, there could potentially maybe be some board minutes that I can go back to and actually find, and then I'll share those with you all.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing those questions up. That's greatly appreciated.
Just probably a stepping back question. I assume that I don't know if it's worth just talking about the high level process of kind of how the contract gets renewed. I assume there's some kind of maybe back and forth between the superintendent and the board around this, which would contribute to kind of what we see here at the end. But I don't know if there's any high level discussion that's worth talking about what that process looks like.
So I know also our legal department is involved in the contract and human resources as well. So all of those parties are involved with the contract. I don't know the exact details of how they come up with the changes.
That might be in the past. Pardon?
Does Amira, have you had any experience with this yet on the board or know how the process works of negotiating the contract?
I have not. We have not. We have not talked about this in the last couple months. So no, but these are really good questions. So
if you read through the contract further, it does look like maybe it's a 3-year, and maybe I could be wrong, because then it says basically in the most updated contract, it says there'll be COLA increases, cost of living increases for 2022, 2023, and 2023, 2024. So maybe it's a 3-year cycle for contract negotiation. Is that how? I'm not sure. I'm just kind of assuming that.
Yes. Yeah. So there's a 3-year term, and they do evaluations every year, but then they do the contract every 3rd year for the following 3 years. And so, so normally a board liaison such as Amira would have participated in that, but I think it was done just prior to her joining. So she doesn't have that information, and nor do I, because I don't go to the board work study sessions where they probably discuss this. And then Susie isn't on this call today either. She may have a little bit of information, but I'm also thinking that potentially maybe that we may need to bring HR and our legal team into this discussion when we do this portion of the monitoring, just so that they can provide what they're doing as part of the negotiations, because we've recently obviously just had a negotiations. So I think that would have probably have been good. So what we can do is we can hold this discussion, and then we can do an invite where we can invite HR and our legal partners and come back to this for a further discussion at another meeting, if that's okay.
And I can try, and since I've done it the past 2 years, I can try and print off the current contract in this one and kind of compare. So I'm not trying to do it in real time.
Yeah. No, that would be great.
Okay.
Yes. We want to make sure that we're, being transparent, and that you all have the proper information to feel that you can properly respond to this monitoring question. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have the folders from previous years in your work folder, so you should be able to see stuff in there too.
Okay, perfect.
I think that would be great if we can have that. And I guess the only, and I don't know if this probably starts to get out of the bounds of kind of the scope of our discussion, but I think it would be good just to even hear from like the HR and other folks around kind of like the contractual pieces, and of course the financial implications, and kind of how things like succession planning and those things kind of work into things, because obviously, we just want to obviously try to be as ahead of the game as possible, from having a leadership folks or opportunities or potential candidates if something happens. And of course, that always incurs additional costs. So that would be great to hear part of that as part of that discussion as well, if possible.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Because yes, they do have the succession planning in place as well. And so, and Amira probably may have heard a little bit about that in just some of her board retreats and so forth, just so she is getting a better understanding of what all goes into being a board member. But definitely, I think that'll be important. And we will try and get them maybe for the next board meeting, so we don't let this span too long, or not board meeting, I'm sorry, next FAC meeting, so we don't let this span a little bit too long. Okay, perfect. Does anybody else have any questions for Heather right at this moment, or we're okay just putting a hold on this topic and then coming back to this maybe next time? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Heather, for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it does look like we have John on the line as well. John, if you don't mind turning your camera on, I'd appreciate it. And he is here to answer any questions that you have regarding 2.46. And then I'm also here to answer or support any additional questions that there might be on that. So 2.46, if you go to your 2.46 tab, I believe this kind of asks about what type of receivables that the district receives, what's generally considered past due, and what steps are taken by our team to ensure we collect our outstanding balances. So does anybody have any questions they want to start off with? No? Okay, so I'll start the lead in.
Sorry,
John,
sorry,
go ahead.
Again, I apologize. So I'm going backwards, but I assume we're really just talking about obviously parents and students, right? This is that the scope of these kind of payments.
Also vendors, or not vendors, lessees and renters from other district properties.
So they all kind of fall into the same policy or same handling.
We do make an effort to collect any outstanding money from anybody that owes us money, because the district does lease out some property, and we do attempt to collect on that in the same method by invoicing on a monthly basis and then pursuing anything after that if it's not paid on a reasonable time frame.
Can you give us an example of one of those rental properties you're referring to?
So the campus that we have has an aerospace company, a cafe, and a coffee roasting company, all of which are part of the same building, but the district leases those buildings out. So we always invoice them, and we make sure that we either pursue collections on that if needed. The district also leases out some cell tower spaces in various places that we do the same thing with. Yes.
You know, how many, I'm just curious, how many cell towers we have on district property? I remember when that was brought up several years ago.
I believe it's 22 right now. It goes up and down because either new negotiation happens and other things have happened, and then Sprint buying, or T-Mobile buying Sprint meant that because we had contracts with both of them, it's been going down because they've been consolidating the amount of towers because they don't need them anymore.
Right. Are there any problematic companies or anybody we have trouble collecting from on a regular basis or anything?
Not anymore. We get paid on a monthly basis for current invoicing at this point from every lessee and renter that we have.
So we haven't had to take any action against anybody, you know?
In the past, yes, but that's not recently.
Not for this reporting period.
Not for this reporting year, no.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Is there, just curious if you have any data just around high level data around kind of what the percent split between essentially business versus kind of consumer or parents, if you will?
Do you mean as far as what revenue is generated via that versus student fees or something else?
No, out of the total amount of, say, collections that you're going after, what is the split between essentially kind of parents/students and kind of businesses?
Business. So for the lessees and the other property that we rent out, we aren't pursuing any collections on that because everybody is either current or under a contract to pay back everything. So we aren't pursuing any business to business collections for anybody right now. Pretty much all of the outstanding things are either negotiated under contract for when they're repaying us past dues or current.
And those past dues you're talking about are business related, right?
Yeah, if a company has an outstanding balance or for some reason they're paying us too much, both of those are either collected at the time or we put them under a contract, say, here, you have a past due balance. Here's what the negotiated repayment schedule of that is going to be. And then we follow through on that and then make sure that they follow through on that.
Okay. And maybe ask it differently. Is there like an average kind of balance that's overdue, for parents/students versus those businesses that you just kind of talked about?
Not that I have readily available. Yes.
So I can just interject because when we go over the full monitoring report for 2.4, which we'll do once John is done, I do have average dollar amounts in there for student fees. Student fees for active students, we generally run in the 1.3 to 1.8 realm. I do have some additional data in the 2.4 that we can go over, but I also provided some data on inactive students where we're roughly running around the same. So it's about a 50-50 split between active and inactive students. And that is some discussions that we will have with the Board of Education as well on kind of next steps. I provided Chris some more extensive data. I don't know if he's shared that with the board as of yet. I haven't actually had a chance to sit down with Chris and go over that information. But yes, definitely your question, Vince, around can we kind of do a comparison? It's a little bit hard because our student fees are smaller dollar amounts for larger chunks of individuals, where our rent is higher dollar amounts for a smaller chunk. So there's really not an apples for apples comparison on that.
Did I interpret what you just said as it's almost like if you add those two student components, like it almost adds up to like a 3% bad debt expense percentage or something? Is that kind of what you were saying?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for John on types of income that we have that would be considered receivables?
We can't hear you, Mimi.
Sorry, I thought I had hit the mute button. We also bill for like deaf and hard of hearing students that come into our district and receive services. So we do bill other districts for that. Also, all of our federal grants are on a reimbursable basis. So we expend dollars using grant funds. And then once a month is over, we have to reconcile all of those expenses and ensure they meet the guidelines within those federal guidelines. And then we submit for reimbursement. So those are also what we consider receivables as well. And John, do you want to maybe talk about how we ensure that we get federal reimbursements and DHH reimbursements done on a timely fashion?
So for federal reimbursements, our grant team submits any reimbursement requests, and then they're tracked on spreadsheet just to make sure that anything that we do have outstanding, we follow up on if it's been passed. I think they follow up on things after like 60 days after they've gotten, if we haven't received anything. Otherwise, they're just tracked and deposited when we receive them. DHH, we have our DHH department generate a list of all external student billing that we need to do. And then on a quarterly basis, I send out invoices, make sure that we collect on those and pursue anything after that if they haven't paid us by the time it comes around for the next invoice.
Okay, and then do you want to remind everybody how we manage our outstanding student fee collections?
Sure. So for the student fee collections, any students that have outstanding fees on their account on a monthly basis, we will send out a email reminder that shows all of the outstanding student fees and what they are for. And then on a twice yearly basis, in November and March, we send out a paper mailing as well, just so to addresses on file showing the same information. For those. So we have one of those coming up.
Okay, there's a question from Amira. Do you bill other districts for blind visual impairment services if students have choiced into Adams 12?
I believe that if they are in district, we don't do external billing. It's only for students that are out of district students that come into Adams 12 for that purpose, because we have services that their district doesn't offer.
So yes, so if a student has choiced in and they are considered one of our in-district students, then we would not be billing. Yes. And the reason is they would be in our count. They would be in our general count. Yes.
Sorry, I thought I sent that to everybody. So sorry. No, and that's what I was wondering, and yeah, and I knew within Adams 12 we wouldn't, but I was wondering too, like out of like how you do with the hearing impairment, deaf students, if the same thing is with others. So that's why. Thanks.
Is that reimbursement, is that generally, are we billing them for per pupil funding, or does it go beyond per pupil funding? Is it for those services?
It's for all of the services provided for, and then some audiology equipment, and like if they have a para that they need to have, if they have an interpreter, if they have a nurse,
Right.
all of
Okay.
any ancillary costs that come along with having the student as well, in addition to the daily cost for providing the DHH services.
Okay, do we have any other questions for John today? Okay, well, great. Thank you so much, John, for joining us. We appreciate your time. And if we have any follow-up questions that ever arise, we'll reach out to you, but thank you again.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think the next thing on our agenda is to go over monitoring report 2.4, which is going to be presented to the Board of Education this evening. And in 2.4, there's also the section on mill levies, and I believe mill levies was actually a topic of discussion just for separate monitoring as well. So if you don't mind, I can just kind of do some high level review of the monitoring report, and then we could talk about some mill levies. And then I wanted to allow you all some time to just do some work on prior monitoring sections, just so that you can feel that you're able to spend some time working on a few areas. I am not going to really go over the financial statements for the month of December. The reason I wasn't planning on really going over financial statements is because December is the period that we use to review and monitor and identify where we need to make those necessary changes for the amended budget that was actually approved in January. So because we are presenting the monitor report after we've already done the amended adopted budget, it's almost identical. So there really isn't anything specific to go over. But if you did have any specific questions that you had seen in the financial statements, of course, you're always welcome to ask those. The monitoring report is designed to actually do a high level review of the financial statements, so that when we present to the board, we're generally just presenting to the board the monitoring report itself and going over those high level financial aspects. With the 2.4 monitoring that will be presented to you today and that will be presented to the board this evening, ultimately there were not really any significant changes from one period to the next. I think the biggest things that I did was I made a few modifications to include some additional mill levy reporting. I felt that it was a good time to start expanding on some of the reporting that we will be doing. I'm hoping to do some more expansion going forward, but this was kind of the start, since mill levy is kind of a big part of what you all look at. I just felt that it was good to have additional data in there. So I know Sonia has attached the monitoring report in here, and I'm actually going to open it as well. So I'm not really looking at you all. Actually, I want to see if maybe I can change my view on my phone. So maybe I can see you all. Don't know why that's doing that. But so ultimately, if we want to just take a quick look through the monitor report, I'm going to go to page, let's go to page 6. So on page 6, this just gives you an overview of where we are on our restricted and unrestricted cash. And the policy states that we're in compliance as long as our unrestricted cash maintains above our restricted reserves. And I wanted to point out that you can see in this graph, and that's the purple line, the purple bars, that you can see that over time we start to lessen on our available cash. And generally, we're actually a little bit lower in the months of December. We're a little bit closer to the green line, and but because we still have some bond funds that we haven't spent, we're staying a little bit higher. And then in January, we're going to come down a little bit more, and in February, we're going to come down a little bit more, and in March, we're going to spike back up. And the reason why this happens is because while the district gets equalized funding every month from the CDE, which is the Colorado Department of Education, we don't get equalized payments for property taxes. And so property tax payments are collected basically from property owners such as yourselves, and then it's funneled through to districts once those collections come through. So a bulk of our collections are actually going to come in March and June, because we have those February and those April, May payments that are generally due for either two-time-a-year payers or the one-time-a-year payers. And so That's why we start to see our cash dwindle down, is because we're not getting those big influxes. But then you'll notice in July, we have a really high dollar amount of cash on hand. That's because that's when a bulk of our cash is sitting there waiting to be spent, and it's being used throughout the next 6 to 7 months to ensure that we can make all of the payments that the district is owed to, for salaries and benefits and to our vendors and so forth. All of the cash is invested. We do work with PTA, which is Public Trust Advisors, and they come in and they have their conversations and show how our investments are doing. So we ensure that we try and keep all of our cash available, invested, and that we have the availability of getting to cash to ensure that we can meet those monthly requirements. Does anybody have any questions before I move on to the next section?
Mimi, I don't know. It'd be nice to have kind of like a year over year kind of comparison just to see where we are, versus history. But are we at where we usually are at this time of year? And when we think out to February, when you say we get to the lowest point, do we anticipate we'll be kind of in line with where we usually are? Or, in other words, any issues or concerns?
Yeah, no issues or concerns. And that is a great question. I don't actually do this chart as a year over year, but I actually have another one. Sonia, would you mind popping in the link for the financial statements? Are you able to do that for me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll go get it.
I'm working on one screen. Generally, I have, 3 going. And so I do apologize this morning. Let's see. I'll let Sonia grab those, but yes, we are in line. When Sonia plops in those next one, I can pull up the comparisons that I do that are in the financial statements to just kind of show that expenditures are trending pretty right on where we would expect them to. So don't foresee anything. Plus, I do cash management. I manage the cash, and on my cash management tool, I do ensure that I keep prior year, current year, and my forecast so that I can actually see where I'm trending to make sure, the past few years while we've had bond dollars, it's been really nice because I know I have a little bit of extra kind of that cash. I request for reimbursement of bond dollars when my cash starts to go low. Prior to getting the bond, generally by January, we were at a very low amount that I would have to get into a little bit of our management held. I shouldn't say management held, but we always hold a $40 million amount, which when we meet with the investors, they kind of always provide that one snapshot of there's a $40 million investment. That's kind of our general pot of dollars. And we try and keep that going all year so that I don't really have to get into that. And since we've had the bond, it's been nice. I really haven't had to utilize that 40 million. But generally in January prior to that, I always had to get in and utilize anywhere from 4 to 8 million of that until property taxes come on, and then I can refurbish that 40 million. So the financial statements that Sonia just plopped in here, if we want to go to the page number 2, you can see the bar graphs that I have there, and then the 2 pie charts. But if you can look at the percentage of revenues and you can look at the expenditures, those are 2-year periods. So you can see that we are trending right where we generally are. You can see that our expenditures are actually down a little bit in December over the prior year. That has to do with the fact that, we do have some vacancies, and so we're just a little bit less than where we were last year. And but overall, we are trending revenue wise, we're trending as we expect, a little bit higher, and our percentages of expenditures are trending just a little bit lower due to some of the vacancies that we're seeing right now. Does that maybe answer the questions you were looking for?
Yeah, it gives good direction. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Great. Okay, so then the next section that I can kind of discuss is, and then you can go to page 7. So just one page down from the monitoring report. And that just kind of shows you an overall high level view of what's going on with our financials. You can see where we had our beginning fund balance in each of our funds. You can see our current incoming revenues, the transfers that we've made. And transfers are when we, you can see that the general fund transfers out almost $50 million. The general fund receives all the revenues for the district, and then we transfer them out to ensure that we're being able to manage some of our other funds and keep track of those in a little bit more of a siloed view, so that we can ensure that we're meeting the requirements of, first of all, state and federal requirements. We're meeting the requirements of CDE. We're meeting the requirements of accounting guidelines. And so that 49 million goes out, and it funds charter schools. It funds our information technology department. It funds our insurance reserve department, and it puts some funds into our capital reserve. The other couple of items we have is in our general fund, we also receive those mill levies. We receive five mill levies, and the most recent one, the 5C, we did want to fund some student fees and instructional materials. So we do have revenues going into that instructional special revenue fund. And we have a small amount going into the pupil activity special revenue fund for technology services for the middle schools and the high schools. And then the general fund also supports our athletic department. And we have to run an athletic department in a special revenue fund for the reason that we do collect student fees for students to participate in athletics, but the amount of fees that we collect for a student to participate is not enough to run the entire program. So that is why the general fund supports that. This past year, we did have to support the base program. However, we have just learned of a new grant that is coming our way. So we will actually be backing out this $238,000 in future financial statements, because the grant that is being awarded to our base programs is basically a federal subsidy that's coming in to support ensuring that kiddos are able to attend the base program and to help bring the base program back up to the fund balance levels it was seeing prior to the pandemic. Okay, any questions on this results? Okay, so then if we go to page 8, this is the results that we were just talking with John about. And Vince, these are kind of the questions you were asking us regarding, what are we seeing for student fees? And you can see here that we're right now we're at about 1.4 million where we have student fees over 30 days. And when I say student fees over 30 days, I mean, this can go all the way back to, I believe we had data all the way to 2010. I have presented some information to the cabinet team for them to review. And then again, I'll meet with Chris and hopefully we can get in front of the board to decide on next steps. But we do have a lot of fees assigned to kiddos that may have qualified for a free and reduced status, but their parents did not complete the waiver form, which is simply just a checkbox saying that you can share my information. And a lot of times that checkbox is scary for people to see. They don't quite understand what sharing their information means. And so where a family may qualify for free and reduced benefits, they're not seeing that because they did not check that box. And then the other amount that I'm showing here, which is very similar to the amount of active students, is the inactive students, which is about 1.3 million as well. And this is for all those students who have left our district at one point or another during their career without paying any fees. We have identified and worked with schools around how this happens. And again, a lot of these fees are going back to, oh, sorry, Kathy, you're asking, this is page 8. We're on page 8 of the monitoring report. A lot of this goes back to years past where We did not have a very good checkout policy for when a student leaves. And so if we are aware a student is leaving, we do have a checklist policy now that walks office staff through ensuring that we get this. But a lot of times kiddos just leave. They move, they do whatever, and they don't really tell anybody. And so, it's not a perfect solution, but as long as we know a student is leaving, we are able to do these steps to ensure that we're getting those collections. But prior to the past 2 years, when we did the work to identify how to ensure that we have a checkout process, a lot of these balances are prior to that. And so again, this is just something where we have been trying to reach out to these families. I can tell you that we just did a mailing in November to notify all of these families, so all of our families, for this full amount. And we got I believe I have a picture of it, and I wonder if I can find it really quick. I can share my screen with you and show you a picture. Let me see if I can find it. But we got a lot of mail back this last go around, a lot of inaccurate addresses. And believe it or not, we actually had some families that actually opened their mail and gave us kind of a nasty gram back, such as saying a couple of them that they literally wrote on the front of the envelope saying, my student hasn't gone here for 4 years, quit bugging me. I'm not paying this, just things like that. And sorry, my emails aren't loading very quickly, so I'm not getting to that picture as quickly as I'd hoped. So I apologize, but it was about 4 of those mail bins that, I don't know if you ever see the postal carriers that they carry around their postal that's full with mail. And so it was about 4 of those bins full. So I think there's about 400 in there. So, there's probably, roughly maybe close to 2,000 pieces of mail we got back. Okay, and Vince has to log off. Okay, thanks, Vince. We appreciate you being here. And so we do have some items in place, as John talked. We do our monthly mailings, our emails, then we do the physical mailing, and we do our transitioning mailing, so that we are trying to capture all of those fees. But we just run into situations where some people just have personal situations going on and they just haven't paid. And so those are the areas that we need to move forward with the board and kind of talk about how to address those going forward. Does anybody have any questions regarding that section? Okay. And I don't know why all of a sudden I lost stuff. Okay, there I go. Okay, so then I think what we're going to do is we are going to go all the way down to page 13 now. And on page 13, this is where we start talking about the mill levy. So this is going to cover a couple things. We'll go over this, but we were also supposed to talk about 2.47 and 2.417. And so I'm going to wrap that into this monitoring presentation so you don't have to listen to 2 things. So you can see if you go down to page 12, I have added a new schedule. I have never presented this schedule in this report before, but I've always done this schedule. And I think I've actually shown it to you all independently, but I decided to add it into this report. So this kind of just talks about the various mills that we have, and it shows you how they're being spent. Now, the one thing that's different with all the prior 4 mills before we got to 2018 is the prior 4 mills had more generic language about how we would use those funds. When we got to the 2018 mill, we felt that it was really important that we actually put into place a priority investment plan. And so that is why the 2018 mill levy has more priorities that you can specifically tie the numbers to. I think that was a spectacular decision on the current administration's term time. I think that, in prior years when mill levies were gone in 91, 2000, 2004, 2008, they knew they needed funds to support different initiatives. And while I think they had very good plans at that point in time, they weren't specified out. And so how those funds are being used is you can see at the bottom, I say here that in 1991 and 2000, when the language came across, it was intended to support the development of our staff, to ensure that we were able to get textbooks for students. We wanted to ensure that we had a good program for school choice. We wanted to make sure that there was a professional development department. We wanted to support additional funding for special education and campus supervisors. And so how we have done this is we have allocated those funds out to those specific areas. And you can kind of see based on here, this is how the results turn out. You can see the adopted budget for the 91 and the 2000, and you can see where actuals are trending. I know it's always kind of an odd thing when you see something like in the 2000 and you see $7.1 million in the salary and you don't see anything in the benefits, but yet we have benefits. I think this might have just been a load issue. So when we did amend it, I'm sure we've probably corrected this so that there is salary and benefits in both, because obviously salaries is, you always have to pay benefits on salary. So I think that was just a load issue. And then when we go into the direct instruction section, we have some purchase service supplies and internal reimbursements going on here, where we say we were just going to support salaries and benefits. This very well could be that we had some priority changes within the direct instruction for whatever we were supposed to be purposing these funds for, or they were charges that are incorrect. And then as I do these reports every quarter, I send these out to the accounting and the budget teams and have them researched. So these could be also cleaned up as well before the next reporting period. If we scroll down to the next page, to page 14, you can see the data that's reported for the 2004 and the 2008. And when these mill levies went out for override election, they were intended to support certified staffing compensation, to increase our graduation requirements, to support student instructional supplies, to support English language learners, to provide additional funding to cover the increased cost of utilities, communications, and fuel costs. And then we also have a little bit of funding in here for our senior citizens work program. You can look at this and see where we are trending based on the adopted budget and the actuals. It looks like the same exact thing happened here for the salaries and benefits on both the 2004 and the 2008. And so I'm sure those will be corrected by the next reporting period. You can also see that utilities doesn't have anything being charged here for the 2004. And generally what happens here is utilities is being paid in big bulk, and it's tough for the team that's doing the utilities to every time go in and say, well, a portion of this goes to utilities. So this is more of a review that we kind of do at the end of the year to identify where we are in utilities, and any overages in that budget, we move over to the utilities line. So while we are paying utilities every month, you most likely will not see this little section being charged until a reconciliation is done. And generally they might be doing that in December. I think they do it on a biannual basis. So I would imagine by the March turnaround, we'll see this all of a sudden having charges in here. If not half, potentially the full amount, because we could just be at that point already. The other thing that I didn't mention on this is that all mill levies have to have an allocation supporting the charter schools. So you can look at all 4 of these quadrants, and you can see the top row of each one provides an amount that's allocated to charter schools. While the mill levies themselves don't go out and specifically say to support charter schools, that is just a law that we have to allocate a portion to them. And we do have a board policy that identifies how that is allocated out. But basically, we have to take an allocation of 95% of our total mill levies, and we have to equally divide that out by a membership number. So these amounts are divvied out by membership to our charter schools and to our district. Okay. Does anybody have any questions regarding the 2.47 section? Because this is a monitoring item as well. Okay. So then I think what we'll do is there was really no significant changes throughout the monitoring report. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way to the very last page, which is 2.417. And this is the 2018 mill levy. And this is the same schedule that you have seen every month, or I'm sorry, every time we do monitoring. So every quarter, this provides you our current investment priorities that were approved at the time we went out for the 2018 mill. It shows you the initial investments that we had planned. This mill levy is the only mill levy we have that increases annually based on inflation. So you can see in the fiscal year 21-22 allocation column, the amount that's being allocated to this priority is greater than the initial investment. That is because this mill levy grows annually by the amount of inflation. And that allows for the programming to grow itself. So a lot of our programming includes salary and benefits. So as salary and benefits increase, this inflation helps ensure that these programs can maintain their current level. You can look over to the far column about around the preliminary ending reserve. You can see that there are some programs that are starting to dwindle down in their ending fund balance this year, some that are going completely down to zero. And then if we look across and we see if they're going to have an ending fund balance of zero, we can kind of look at their priority costs that they're being allocated and where they are preliminary. And we can, so I'm looking, for example, let's look at like row 12, where we're allocating out $837,000 this year. We're currently at 400, and I believe that's 40,000. So you can see that we're basically running at 50%. And so at this point in time, we plan on not having an ending fund balance. So if this continues to grow at the same rate, we'll either be able to maintain the exact staffing, or depending on what inflation is versus negotiation for salaries and benefits, we could actually overspend this fund. So that's where then we have to readdress these, what we kind of look at as cliff funds, where the funds that we're bringing in are just not enough to sustain the program for ongoing. So that's when we would need to look at, do we need to re-advise on some of the other priorities that have higher fund balances that tend to grow or stay the same? Or do we need to look for other support coming from our general fund? And what is that going to look like? And so those are some of the discussions that will happen during the budget planning season that is coming up. And so we will be coming back to you guys on those types of items if we do have to address any types of reinvestment priorities. The other thing to point out is I learned on Monday morning that row number 7, this has been kind of a pending priority for several years, just for the mere reason that they were in the stages of putting this program together, and then COVID hit, and this program kind of became a least priority on the development side, as we needed to transition to supporting our students and staff with the COVID requirements. But this is back on the table. They actually have a plan that they have presented to cabinet. I know they're doing some next steps, and they will be moving forward with that. So I'm sure they will be taking program ideas to the board in the next several months. And they're doing this as part of the budget planning so that they can implement this program starting July 1st. So that is good news. Okay, and I think that would wrap up the monitoring report itself, and that also wraps up the 2.47 and the 2.417 review of those sections. So if you have any question on those items, you are free to ask them now. No question. So everybody feels comfortable about where we are with our mill levies, and they feel confident that we're spending them as voter approved. Nothing, no concerns there. Do you feel that, oh, sorry, Kathy, I think you're mute.
No, I was saying no, I don't have any.
Okay, okay, perfect. You know, and if there's, you know, I'm always looking to provide more information. You know, I've been talking with Susie about some different ways we can demonstrate some of the data, and we're working on a few different things. But, you know, if there's ever something, you know, like Vincent indicated, you know, maybe I could show year over year on our cash requirements, even though I do have the other year over year, maybe I could do a few modifications. Feel free to reach out and let me know, because, you know, that's what I like to do. I like to show the data, share the data, make sure that we're being as transparent as we possibly can. And I just want to make sure you guys feel that you're getting the tools and the data that you need to feel comfortable in your roles as well. Okay. Well, we have about 15 minutes left, and that's what I was hoping for, because I wanted to give you guys a little bit of time to work on monitoring report. And so I think what I can do is I can kind of mute myself if you guys have any questions. I think you guys might want to talk amongst yourselves, maybe start on a few of the monitoring sections that you have already done. I do know I owe you some information regarding 2.55, and I do have some additional data that was put into 2.55, and I wanted to just kind of walk you through a little bit of that. There are multiple folders in 2.55 for the various areas that you guys requested to review. And they gave us all kinds of data. And when I went in to kind of just look at the data, I was like, oh, they're going to be so overwhelmed. They're not really going to know what they're looking for. And really what I was looking for was to ensure that the proper bid net posting went out, and that we had a proper interview process, meaning an RFP went out, and that we did the proper process, that we had responses. And so in the 2.55 folders for each of the bids that are in there, there should be an awards, I believe it was called awards document. I'm going to open this up just so I make sure I give you guys the correct information. So recommendations, notices of intent, notice of awards. So for example, if you go into the link that Sonia just shared, and you go into the 2.55 folder, and then you go into the bid list, and then you go into the first one that's there, the ITB 21-034, the invitation to bid. And then you go into the third folder that's there, recommendations, notice of intent, notice of awards. Okay.
I'm sorry, can you repeat some of that, Mimi? I was a little late getting to the folder.
Nope, you're fine. So we're going to go into the 2021-2022 external monitoring report work folder. Then you're going to click in the 2.55 folder. Sorry. And then you're going to click in the bid list. Okay. And then once you're in the bid list, if you want to click in the very first folder, that's ITB 21-034. And then you go into the recommendations, notices of intent, notices of award folder. And you can see there are 3 items in here that all say BidNet, 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 BidNet. And those are really the items that you guys want to look at just to ensure that that our purchasing department posted this on BidNet. They notified individuals that there was an open RFP and that we did see a list of respondees. Now, just because we get a list of respondees does not necessarily mean that all of them are going to respond to our bid. This just means that individuals have identified that this is their area of expertise, and they've looked at the identified RFP, and then that is their choice to move forward. And it's the proper process is occurring within our district. And so that's really what 2.55 is asking you to do, is to ensure that the district did follow our normal rules and policies within responding to the monitoring report, that we didn't we didn't have any nepotism, and we ensured that we followed district policies and best business practices for procurement. And so I think that would help lead you guys to just provide you kind of the best information on that. By no means do you have to look at everything right now today, but I did want to give you this 15 minutes just to kind of look through that folder and to see if there was anything else that you guys felt that you needed. The other item that I owed to you was to look at section 2.5, I think it was 7, where Matt Schaefer did not have the answer to the last time that we were on regarding what were those 12 items that were fixed or otherwise that were added. And those actually were all bond projects. So they, what they were doing was they were looking at all of our bond projects that we had added into our asset inventory. And so some of those projects may have been ongoing for the past couple of years, and that because they finalized, we were able to add them into our asset system. And so those are the items they were that they were looking at. And we do have in the monitor report that I just shared to you, you also have a full list of all of our projects that were open. And so you can kind of see as projects have dwindled down, they would have been added to the report. So I think those were the last of the items that I think you were waiting on from me. Outside of that, you do have some work time that you guys can look through and ask any questions that you may have if you have any, because we just want to make sure that you feel like you're able to respond to your sections, or feel like you're able to compose your sections with the right amount of information without waiting too long.
What section was the receivables? I was going to type a comment. By the time I got logged into Google, then I lost which page that was on.
That is 2.6, 2.4.6, sorry, 2.4.6.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, everyone, we have just about a minute left of the time that we've allocated for today. Of course, you're welcome to continue to work on this. And if you have any questions and you need direction from me, you can reach out. Hopefully over the next several meetings, we'll be able to have at least 10, 15 minutes for you guys to work on these as well. I was actually looking at the attendance roster today, and we only have really 4 of us on here because Amira is a liaison. So I don't really believe we have a quorum today to vote on allowing the extension of sorry, my brain just like went, who are we?
Josh Click.
Josh Click, thank you, sorry. So I don't think we can vote on that. So I think we do need to wait till the next meeting, or either that, or I'll have Sonia maybe send something out, maybe in a Google form or something where people can vote on that being a yes or no. I just feel like we have to at least have a full quorum, and we just don't today. So if no one has any specific questions right at the moment, I will be respectful. Oh, go ahead.
My only one is in terms of this, just I think for us, even though we can't vote today, maybe to think about what some of our options are for the extended leave. And one thing that crossed my mind was, because if Josh is unsure, that maybe we set ourselves a timeline of his leave, and then maybe when we are going to revisit in case this is an ongoing issue, so that we're staying on top of it rather than just letting it go open-ended and being down a member. And so just, I don't know if we're talking 3 months, or 90 days or something, that we come back if he's not able to have rejoined us in 90 days, if we then check in with him, or I'm not exactly sure what the best practices are on that, but that was one thing that crossed my mind.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, I think that is a good idea. Yeah, definitely. We will put that in there. Okay, thank you. Well, thank you all so much for today. I hope that you're still enjoying this method of how we were moving forward with Finance and Audit Committee, and you're getting all the information that is important to you. So we do have the 2.6 to follow back up on, and then we will try and get HR and legal to join us for hopefully our next meeting, just for a few minutes, so we can continue the discussion on the superintendent's contract. Okay, great. Well, thank you and have a wonderful day. Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.